What's up? Welcome to the broadcast. This is Uncle D.
People wash their ass in the tub, Kamala Harris.
You would tune in to Uncle D. D's black man talk. Pull up, homie, take a seat. Don't be a shadow watcher every day. You learn something and you earn something. Let them know and drop some money in the plate. It's getting cold, ladies, talking ratchet. There's a king here, grab your coat, zip your jacket. Keep quiet for a second, close your jaw. Turn Spurling, this ain't Furling, know the law. Talking Constitution, pushing pins when he shootin', give him that. Masculinity, just for the record, sprinkle that. You can keep your cat, gotta cut it. Only cat he rubbing, gotta love it. I call it Molly Buddy. Gotta vote your interest, voting earns. Presidential, this is for the money that I earn. When you gon' learn, my people, that evil mixed with evil. No matter what you're doing, baby, this ain't equal. Sometimes when you're special, you get hated. The test is for the best, you're damn right, my people made it. Uncle D, Blizzard King, you've been served, gotta notice. Now black men out here know we winning, gotta hold it now. Uncle D, you've been served, get your notice. Now black men out here know we winning, gotta hold it now. Uncle D, you've been served, get your notice. Now black men out here know we winning, gotta hold it now. Uncle D, you've been served, get your notice. Now black men out here know we winning, gotta hold it now.
Hey man, I'll do what I do.
Somebody need to whip your ass.
Get up and whip him, Sweets.
Hey, don't be putting the money in my hand all rough.
Take your ass out here. You buy you a Flowbee and cut your own damn hair from now on.
Looking at myself as I would see myself in the future. Looking up at my father, looking at his face and seeing my face.
People are so inclined to believe that black men are deadbeat fathers.
The f else you need?
I'm the black boogeyman villain that just came on. Something going wrong, I'm the one you put the blame on. Community is f***ed up, shame on me. Deadbeat daddy put the blame on me.
Black men actually enable the very thing that they hate.
Okay, so by now, everybody has heard about the CDC research that was done, that black men are going around using that as their safe words to prove to everybody that they are excellent fathers and they are the most involved fathers of any other demographic.
Shut your ass up.
Shut your ass up.
You bring the game on me when I'm the best father. All the pain I see telling me to try harder. Broke in, I'm dusty, no deodorant, I'm musty. I'm the fall guy for the race when you getting busted. Stand up and be a man when your women want the role, want the leadership, the money, run the household, be as naked as a child, and not supposed to smile. You the reason why the neighborhood kids running wild. Karma comes around, baby, keep your cookie. Matter of fact, I'm on a flight, you can pass that shit to Pookie. Chicago back to Houston, New York we deemed as useless. Baby, I'm in the yard, and mommy serve me juices. Every movie needs a bad guy, why not be the black guy? Shit, you can hang it on me. You need a scapegoat, point us out and take no shit. You know they gonna bring it on me. When you need a reason and the ladies commit treason, all you gotta do is bring it on me. Your daddies and your uncles and your nephews, that's amongst us, watch the whole world. Blame it on me. You to blame for this crisis, you to blame for this ISIS. Paper saver got created as favored. Who you think gon' die for being righteous? Who gon' vote for the oppressor? Me. Who pay most to get the lesser? You handing out all of the treasures, the immigrants getting the blessings. Who you think rapping is real? Want my opinion about this kill? I'm not Arab, homie, how did this feel? Cause I'm not living off in this real. My opinion, no matter, we get a deal. No reparation, just meal. I'm only speaking about what we feel. Keep talking that talk, I need a refill. Every movie needs a bad guy, why not be the black guy? Shit, you need a scapegoat, pointers out to take no shit. You know they gonna blame it on me. When you need a reason and you ladies commit treason, all you gotta do is blame it on me. Your daddies and your uncles and your nephews, that's amongst us, watch the whole world. Blame it on me. Every movie needs a bad guy, why not be the black guy? You can blame it on me. When you need a scapegoat, point us out and take notes. No, they gonna blame it on me.
Fathers are underappreciated. Those of you guys who don't know, my name is Dennis Spurling, also known as Uncle D, affectionately by the young fellas out there. And of course, the Blizzard King. Nevertheless, or should I say, I'm an attorney, I'm a podcaster, and I'm also, my favorite title is that of father. But I'm going to take the opportunity today to really talk to you guys about fatherhood.
Black man hit me up being like, yo, I can't wait to be a dad. I can't wait to be a father. And I feel like I owe those young men to tell them, like, bro, this is hard because it exposes things about you that you don't know about yourself. It exposes all of your insecurities. And it's a huge emotional undertaking. Bro, when you see this and me playing with my baby and it looks really cool and you want to have those moments, just know that that's the upside. It comes with a downside and it can be incredibly painful. So before you take on a family, bro, go see somebody about your past and go see somebody about the trauma that you've endured throughout the course of your life and start healing. Because if you don't heal from that, you'll have all this and you'll never be happy. Especially anybody who thinks that you can just pour water over a lady and a baby and have a happy family overnight. This ain't oatmeal, man.
Welcome back to the broadcast. Shout out everybody in the chat room there. Good looking out. You guys, we got some important business to take care of. So Joy Reid, she basically is still upset. Well, let me first do this. My name is Dennis Spurling, also known as Uncle D, the Blizzard King. Big shout out to Braxton, the Snake Fiend, Mark the Freelancer, Rasta Hill. Who else we got in? Boris Barracuda. Big shout out to everybody who is in here with me. Make sure you become a member. I don't see any members in here yet, but make sure if you haven't become a member that you are, because that will be the only way you have access to all of that YouTube broadcast, those 4 years of YouTube broadcasts that made Uncle D a legend. You know what I'm talking about? Somebody type legend in the chat room, man. There's nobody else on YouTube like me. Nobody else putting it out there like me. You see me smite mine enemies and knock them to or fro when they run up. So there's nobody else like that to do. But the thing about me is, because I can't be bought, because I can't be paid for, money is not what motivates me. I'm always going to tell you the truth, even when you don't like it. I don't care if you hate me. I think you guys know that already. I'm always going to tell you the truth. My voice is uncompromised. I can't be bought. The things that I want can't be given to me by human beings. You see? I want the Most High to be happy with my work. You understand what I'm saying, family? So, and this is part of my life's work. This is part of my life story. And so I'm always going to tell you all the truth. And I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Now, if I'm wrong about a fact, I'll admit it, because I don't have an ego like that. I just really want black men to be successful. And at this point, I want black people to be successful. But I know that success as far as the black community starts with strong, healthy, masculine black men who are willing and motivated to sacrifice on behalf of the black community. But nevertheless, big shout out to Lavelle. Thank you so much. If you don't subscribe, then you ain't black Joe Biden. So let me go ahead and cue this video up. I want you guys, this is from Fox News the other day. Golly. Joy Reid said some really harsh things. You guys know who Joy Reid is? She is I guess we would call her a pundit on Fox News. She said some really, on MSNBC, said some really nasty things. And I want to go ahead and just let this play. Speaks for itself. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
Es su culpa, hombres latinos.
Also Latino men who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportation.
I want you to notice how she said mixed. Listen to the vitriol in her voice when she said mixed. She might, I mean, that damn near had the same as a racial epithet. Listen to what this woman says.
Disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families. Most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
Why you got to say abuelas? Why you have to go there? Your abuelas. It sounds very facetious. Sounds like a put down. Basically, she's hoping that Donald Trump breaks up Latino men's family. So basically what she said was Latino men who, despite utter disrespect shown by Trump, okay? And this is in her opinion, the Latino men were disrespected. Shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families. Most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So you own, this is what she said, you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, your sisters, and your abuelas from here on out. Now, the first thing, family, this was calculated. Yeah, somebody typed blonde wig, blonde hair in the chat room. Yeah. First, what this was calculated to drive fear into the heart of the women of these Latino men that she is castigating, the wives, sisters, and grandmothers. That was the first thing to do. Hopefully, this is what Joy Reid is hoping. She's hoping that by making them afraid, they will then begin to verbally chastise those Latino men. So this is the same thing they did to the Black community. She's trying to drive a wedge between the men and the women and the Latino family. That's what she's trying to do. Now, this Fox commentator has a few things to say about it in response, but that's the play. You understand me? So let's keep listening.
Dios míos. Is that really?
And other than that, it was a very nasty. Let me
way to speak to the fastest growing demographic in the United States. Imagine if I had said something like that.
Imagine if a white man had said something like that about the Latino family, or a white man, a white woman had said something like that about Black people. How would we feel? Okay, I want y'all to just roll with me because I'm going to get where I need to get. It's very important. This has a lot. Some of you all may be saying, but why is it that we care about this woman? She is not foundational Black American. Both her parents are immigrants. Why do we care? I'm going to tell you in a minute. Okay, but let's keep.
And what about white women? They were supposed to come to Kamala's rescue.
No.
Black people voted for somebody they know is a racist. White women voted for somebody they know took a.
So now we got the Latino chick coming down on Black people. But listen to the Latino. Listen to this.
Way their reproductive rights. So all of those things are hard for people like me to understand.
She didn't say anything about Latino people, and she's Latina. Did you peep that out? Are y'all with me? All right. It's a lot going on in this video. And I'm just getting warmed up, but I want y'all to, I'm laying the foundation right now.
And rather than admitting that they went too radical on the trans agenda, Democrats blame Republicans for highlighting it.
We shouldn't apologize for the fact that we do support transgender rights and the people who are a part of that community. What Republicans were able to do is exploit that.
In other words, what they're saying is you mad. The Democrats are mad at the Republicans for telling the world what the Democrat message is, what their agenda is.
Yeah, it's called discussing an issue.
Right.
Of course, their favorite punching bag had to get the lion's share of the blame.
There should be accountability, and Joe Biden should not have run for a second term. There should have been a competitive primary in January. He should have dropped out in January and not July.
Now, the Biden pylon is something to behold.
Now, we're not going to go through all this, man.
And of course,
the main thing.
I think that's fair, but
let me slide this back. Go ahead.
Yes, you're suffering. These things led to that. And I think that the Democratic Party has
How much did Al Sharpton get? 500,000? Somebody type 500,000 Al in the chat.
to really deal with listening to some of the people in the party that is trying to reconnect them to their roots, what they stood for.
I think that's fair, but I think we have to factor in massive disinformation.
Oh, it's disinformation.
So we don't need to go into all that. This is the most important part right here. Okay. This is what we're gonna focus on, right?
It's Latinos.
Also Latino men who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
All right, so let's break all this down. First off, I know I have a few Latinos watching my broadcast, and let me say this. What Joy Reid said was inflammatory, condescending, and deeply disrespectful to the Latino community. And what she meant was even worse. And I'm going to break that down. So Joy Reid essentially told Latino men that they're stupid and too ignorant and too self-loathing to understand their political choices. Okay? The implication is that Latino men who voted for Trump betrayed their families, abandoned their culture, and aligned themselves with a man she deems a racist villain. And her words, they weren't just a critique of a political decision. See, they were dismissal of an entire group's autonomy, agency, and intelligence. This is the same tired, elitist playbook we've seen from liberal talking heads for decades. And when the so-called marginalized people refuse to fall in line with their progressive overlords like Joy Reid, they get shamed, they get ridiculed, they get attacked. Now, Joy Reid's remarks, these despicable remarks, they reveal a festering superiority complex within these liberal elites, and that there's a belief amongst these people that they know better than anyone else, and they know what's good for you and your family. And if you dare think for yourself, if you dare try to prioritize your values and your faith or your family's economic well-being over their agenda, you become a traitor to your identity. Let's be clear. What Joy Reid was really saying, okay, what she was really saying, she wasn't just calling out Latino men for voting their conscience. She was weaponizing guilt and shame to bully them into submission. She was telling Latino men, your vote isn't yours. It belongs to the Democratic Party. It belongs to me. And if you step out of line, you'll be held personally responsible for every bad thing that happens to your community. That's what she said. This is not political discourse. It's ideological tyranny. And let's not ignore the hypocrisy here. Joy Reid is an immigrant, or a first-generation immigrant herself, who's tethered herself to the Black community. Okay, and that's going to come into play later. Nevertheless, she has no problem lecturing Latinos about their identity while erasing the cultural diversity within their community. She speaks as if Latino, and somebody type Latino in the chat room, okay? She speaks as if Latino is a monolith, and she's ignoring the vast differences between Tejanos, Chicanos, Caribbean Latinos, and others. She would never accept such sweeping generalizations about Black Americans. Let us try to lump her in with Black folk, foundational Black folk. She gonna definitely distinguish herself, right? I'm sure she did it on all her college applications or at least when she started doing well for herself, she did. But she feels entitled to reduce Latinos to a single narrative when it suits her agenda. And see, this is why foundational Black Americans are beginning to separate ourselves from immigrants like Joy Reid. See, her statement underscores a growing problem. And liberals, particularly Black liberals in the media, are exposing their own xenophobic and racist tendencies. They're even racist against us as Black Americans. And when their policies fail and their messaging flops, they lash out, not just as foundational Black Americans, but in Middle America as a whole, including whites, Latinos, and anyone else who refuses to comply. Okay, Joy Reid's words are a reflection of the disdain that East and West Coast elites have for regular, everyday Americans. They view Middle America, working class Latinos, whites, Blacks, they rural whites, conservative Black Americans. They see us as backward, as ignorant, and as unworthy of respect. Their arrogance is not just insulting, it's dangerous because it fuels division, it alienates communities, and it reinforces the very dynamics they claim to oppose. And make no mistake, this is why America rejected the Democratic elite in the re-election of Donald Trump. Joy Reid's comments are a reminder to all of us, okay, why so many Black, white, and Latinos, and everyone in between, are fed up with being told how to think and how to live by people who neither understand nor respect our lives. Joy Reid's remarks, they weren't a political misstep. They were a window to the elitist disdain that drives the modern left. And it is that very disdain that continues to push more and more Americans, all of us, towards leaders who actually respect their choices and their values and our voices. Shout out to my man, Mile High Gambling. Thank you for being the second person to contribute to the super chat. Shout out to my man, D-Med, too. Thank you so much. Now, let's talk about this. Joy Reid's remarks, they really underscore a very crucial, or let me say it like this. It's crucial that we as FBA, foundational Black Americans, we have to politically and socially distance ourselves from these Black immigrants who are way out there like that, whether they're extreme left or extreme right. But on this particular case, they fail to grasp the racial dynamics that are very unique to the United States, okay? See, Reid presents herself as a Black woman. If you didn't know any better, you would just see her as a Black woman. Most Hispanics see her, most Latinos see her as a Black woman. And she's managed to fool many into believing or assuming that she's foundational Black American. But her immigrant background and her ideological lens, it shapes, renders her, I'll say, ill-equipped to navigate or speak on the nuanced relationships between the different racial groups here in this country. See, her inflammatory rhetoric, and it was inflammatory, it not only undermines these relationship dynamics, but it also exposes foundational Black Americans to unnecessary scrutiny and animosity. In America, the relationship between Black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, and particularly white Americans and Hispanic Americans, it's evolved over the centuries. And these relationships are deeply rooted in a shared history of struggle and conflict and compromise and, eventually a mutual understanding, okay? It's not perfect, but these dynamics have established unspoken boundaries and agreements that allow for us to coexist and progress in this country. And for the most part, foundational Black Americans, we don't get off into other people's internal business, okay? We don't get off into their in-house internal racial business. We don't worry about their politics. Okay, we leave those other ethnic groups alone. Shout out to my man D-Med. And we don't appreciate outsiders interfering in our business. We don't want them dealing with our internal struggles in our communities. We take umbrage to that. But see, when you have Black immigrants like Joy Reid, right, they lack the sensitivity and the historical context to respect these boundaries. And by inserting herself into Latino community people's business, specifically their voting patterns, and making those divisive remarks, basically hoping that their grandmas and their mamas and wives get deported, she not only disrespects their autonomy, but she also drags foundational Black Americans into this conflict that's not ours to begin with. See, this kind of overreach, it breeds tension among racial groups, and it creates animosity where none previously existed. See, Joy Reid's position as a Black immigrant posing as a foundational Black American woman opens the door for criticism that ultimately falls on the shoulders of foundational Black Americans. See, when she speaks reckless about other groups, it's FBAs who bear the brunt of the backlash. This fosters unnecessary tension between Black folks and Latinos, and it undermines decades of mutual respect and solidarity. Look, the racial dynamics in America are not something to be taken lightly. We're sitting on a powder keg. And foundational Black Americans, white Americans, for example, we have an understanding. I spoke about that the other night. And it's something we forged through a long and complicated history. And while we have our differences, there's a recognition of shared stakes in the national fabric. Similarly, foundational Black Americans and Hispanic Americans often find common ground in working class communities. We have a shared struggle sometimes against systematic inequalities. And there's a delicate relationship, okay? And it requires care and understanding that a lot of these immigrants like Joy Reid, they lack, okay? Because they've not lived the experience of being foundational Black Americans in this country for centuries. Shout out to my man, African Dyadic. Now, what makes Joy Reid's rhetoric particularly harmful is her willingness to weaponize her Blackness to further this divisive agenda. She would not be able to say that if she was a white woman. Did y'all hear what she said? Did you guys hear? I played it a couple times. Did you hear what she said? She basically wishing these people get sent home. And she telling Latino men, I hope your mama and your wife and your grandma get sent home in your mixed family. And she's masquerading as a foundational Black American woman, espousing these views that alienate other racial groups and come off like hate. And she misrepresents the values and priorities of foundational Black Americans. Her actions invite criticism. It brings about animosity, not just towards her, but towards the broader Black community in the United States, which is largely composed of foundational Black Americans. And this is a problem. It's unacceptable, okay? And that's why we as FBA need to assert our distinct identity and refuse to be tethered to this reckless behavior of these folks like Joy Reid. And I don't care if it's far right or far left, okay? That's what I'm trying to explain to you. These radical right and these crazy left-wingers, that doesn't represent us. And so what we need to do is we need to protect the integrity of our relationships with these other racial groups so that we can ensure that our hard-earned respect and understanding that we built is not eroded by these careless words of those who do not share our understand our history. Look, Joy Reid's remarks, they are a reminder of the importance of maintaining clear boundaries between FBAs and these Black immigrants posing as FBAs, because they don't understand the racial dynamics here in America. Her words are dangerous. Her words are ignorant. And the fact that she's wishing harm on the Latino community for expressing their political vote, That's a problem. And it upsets the delicate racial balance that we work so hard to preserve here in the United States amongst all the groups. You understand me? We trying to do our best to keep the powder keg from exploding. And so we need to distance ourselves from people like that. Now, here's the cold part about it. Not only was Joy Reid's inflammatory comments about Latino men voting for Trump, not only were they disrespectful, but she was flat out wrong. Shout out to my man Candor. See, her statement reveals a glaring ignorance of the political and cultural historical dynamics within Latino community. And to dismiss this diverse group as a monolithic block, it's reckless, and it shows that she's ignorant and she has a lack of understanding. And that's unacceptable for somebody who is seen on national TV. Shout out to my man David Dice. I'm gonna get y'all in a minute. I mean, let's set the record straight, right? I'm gonna go ahead and explain to you all why her remarks were both ill-informed and blatantly offensive. First off, the Latino community, and I got a special guest who's gonna come in and hopefully, I'm gonna say a political mover and shaker in the Latino community. I got somebody that I'm gonna have call in a little later on, but so it's not just me talking because I don't want to speak for anybody else. That's part of the racial balance. But nevertheless, this Latino community, it's not homogenous, okay? The cultural and historical and political experiences of Mexican-Americans or Chicanos and Puerto Ricans and Cuban-Americans, Central Americans and South America, they differ. Okay, they're as different as a person from a black person from Sudan and a black person from Nigeria, okay? Or as different as a black person from Ghana and a black person from Georgia. You understand? Their experiences are different as a Caribbean person, an immigrant from Jamaica, as somebody who was born and raised in South Louisiana. And although we all fall under they may all fall under the umbrella Latino, their lived realities and priorities and political leanings, they vary, and they vary significantly. And, to treat them as a single entity is to reduce, it's reductive and it's disrespectful. All right, so, you guys know I'm from California. Born and raised in South Central LA. Raised around Mexicans, raised around El Salvadorians, raised around a lot of Latinos, okay? Also raised around Chicanos. And now I live in Texas. So I'm very familiar with Tejanos, all right? Now, a Chicano, that refers specifically to people of Mexican descent born or raised in the United States. Chicanos embody a very unique cultural identity that's shaped by their dual heritage, that's rooted in Mexico, but is deeply influenced by their experiences growing up in the US, okay? And this identity it's not just ethnic, it's also political. The term Chicano gained prominence during the Chicano movement in the 1960s, and it coincided with the civil rights movement, you understand? And it was the struggle for Mexican-Americans fighting against systematic inequality in education, employment, and political representation. Okay, shout out to my man, Depressed 1177. If you look at some of these signs, when y'all finish with this broadcast, look up where it said no blacks, no Mexicans, no dogs. There are signs that said that. We always treated as though black people were the only ones discriminated against. The Irish were discriminated against. The Italians were discriminated against. Mexicans, Jewish people were discriminated against. America is built on discrimination, keeping one class down, and it breeds that animosity between people. But and I don't want to get off on that, but that's why you can't let prejudice hold you back, because it's always going to be there. But back to being Chicano. So when they say Chicano, that delineates them from the other Latino group, just like FBA delineates us from Nigerians, Ghanaians, Jamaicans, Trinidadians, et cetera, et cetera. But being Chicano carries a sense of pride. Shout out to my man Vito. Thank you so much. I'm gonna read all my super chats. That's their sense of pride and resilience and cultural awareness. And it reflects both a connection to their Mexican heritage and an assertion of their unique American experience. Okay, now let's juxtapose Chicano with Latino. The term Latino, it's a broad pan-ethnic label. Okay, it's like calling people black. You in South Africa, you're black. You in Compton, California, you're black. You in Seattle, Washington, you're black. Your mama white, your daddy black, you're black. Right? That's like, that would be the equivalent of calling a person of a Hispanic origin Latino. Okay, that's just the broad pan-ethnic labeling, and it encompasses people from all over Latin American countries, regardless of their different histories and languages and cultures. Okay, it's a catch-all phrase. It's a catch-all term, I should say. It erases very critical distinctions between Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, Cuban-Americans, Central Americans, and South Americans. For example, roll with me on this. If a Chicano is not the same as a Cuban-American whose history is deeply influenced by fleeing communism in Cuba, why would you call them? They're totally different, these people. You understand? A Mexican-American, a Chicano, his experience is going to be different than a Puerto Rican who was a U.S. citizen by birth, but has a very unique political challenge tied to Puerto Rico's status as a U.S. territory. So the term Latino is just shorthand created and used by outsiders. You understand me? I've yet to go to Colombia and heard a Colombian refer to themselves as Latino. Okay? And they certainly don't refer to themselves as Latinx. You understand? See, this is a gringo term. Somebody type gringo in the chat room. Gringos from the Northeast, okay, who lump together these diverse communities into a single group, and it basically strips away their individuality. It's a term that might make sense at a university in somebody's syllabus or in some sort of governmental form, but it truly fails to capture the depth, the complexity of these people's communities. It's lazy. Okay, it's lazy, it's reductive, and it's disrespectful. And to Joy Reid and the others like her, these nuances are clearly they're clearly unimportant to them. They just throw around terms, Latino, Latinx, without appreciating these people's culture, okay, or their identity within the broad label, which also includes Chicano. Now, why does this matter? To understand Chicano is to understand the culture that exists at the crossroads of two words, rooted in the traditions and the struggles of Mexican heritage, but in the unique challenges that Mexican Americans have here. In this country, right, and how it marginalized them. Chicanos, like many other subgroups within the quote unquote Latino umbrella, they got their own history. They have their own culture, they got their own political realities. And their voting patterns and their values and their priorities are not interchangeable with, let's say, a Cuban-American or a Puerto Rican or a Central American. And for Joy Reid to dismiss this complexity by using Latino, it's just a blanket term to erase the identity and the agency of these communities. Like they're not grown enough to speak on their behalf. It's like I said, it's like referring to Black people as a single block, ignoring the distinctions between a foundational Black American, a Jamaican, a Trinidadian, a Nigerian, a Ghanaian, a South African, a Sudanese. And this failure to recognize diversity, it would not be tolerated within our community, especially from a outsider like a white person, we would call it racism. We would call it prejudice. We would call it bigotry. We would call it ignorant. So why should it be tolerated? When discussing the Latino community, okay? Let me state this again, okay? This ignorance is a hallmark of these coastal elites. They claim to be intellectually superior, but only see the world through a very narrow lens of their privilege and academic detachment. To these Ivy League educated pundits like Joy Reid, these communities are just names in a book. But to those who live in and among them and around them, we see them as very proud, distinct, and diverse groups with unique identities, and they deserve respect, just like we deserve respect. And so by using the term Latino so carelessly, wishing that all these Latino men who voted for Trump have their mamas and aunties and sisters and daughters sent home from their mixed families, man, that's reckless. That's dangerous. It shows a lack of knowledge, but it also shows a lack of respect for these people she claims to criticize in their best interests. Let me be clear. Chicanos are not generic Latinos. They're a vibrant, distinct group. And their identity shouldn't be reduced by these lazy labels. And so when we discuss them, all right, it's critical to understand the uniqueness rather than parroting outdated terminology that does more harm than good. Now, why is all this important? Okay, and for my black folks, just roll with me on this. I'm gonna pull this chart up. I want you to understand something. It's important for me to have laid that foundation for you. Okay, why? Because this is a chart that reflects the voting habits in the 2024 election. Okay, the blue equals the Democrat. The red equals the Republican. Okay? The blue equals the Democrat. The red equals the Republican. Let me make this a little bigger. And as this says, it's essential to remind the media that Chicanos represent the majority within the Latin community. And we reject the label Latino. This is from a Latino website. Notably, 62% of Chicanos backed Kamala. 59% of Puerto Ricans backed Kamala. The support for Trump mainly comes from Cuba, Venezuela, El Salvador, and Argentina. You understand that? So what does that tell you? What it tells me is this goofball, Joy Reid, doesn't know what she's talking about. Let me break this down for you. Mexican-Americans or Chicanos, 62% of them voted for Kamala Harris. So when she says, I hope your grandma gets sent home, these people voted for Kamala Harris. What are you talking about? 33% supported Donald Trump. And you got to understand, Mexican-Americans are the largest subgroup within the U.S. Latino population, largely backed, and they largely back Kamala Harris or the Democratic ticket. And whether you like it or not, they did what they always do. Okay? And they're often characterized by their long-standing ties to the progressive policies and the focus on labor rights, immigration reform. And Joy Reid's broad generalization, it ignores that. They voted their interests. Mexican-Americans, Chicanos voted their interests. Puerto Ricans, 59% voted for Kamala Harris. 37% voted for Donald Trump. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. They have a distinct political perspective tied to their status as residents of the U.S. territory. They too lean Democratic, slightly less than Mexican Americans, but that also reflects the complexities of the unique and political social issues. Now, flip the script. Cuban-Americans, 40% of them voted for Kamala Harris. 40% of them voted for Kamala Harris. 58% of them voted for Donald Trump. Now, all of these people fit under the category of Latino, according to people like Joy Reid. So you have to ask yourself, well, why is it that the majority of the Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans voted for Kamala Harris and the Cubans, you know, a standout subgroup in the Latino community? They've done a lot for themselves. They showed strong support for Trump. But see, why is that? It's because their history is deeply rooted in the collective memory of fleeing Fidel Castro in a communist regime. And for Cuban-Americans, the Democratic Party and their policies, particularly under Kamala Harris, they resemble these socialist and communist ideologies that these folk escaped. And so we can't dismiss their legitimate fears, okay, and their political choice as quote unquote owning the consequences of deportation. That's offensive, and it's ignorant of these people's history. Same thing goes for these Central Americans. You talking about people from El Salvador, Honduras. They supported Kamala Harris, 56%. 36% of Donald Trump. These Central Americans lean Democratic, but with notable support for Trump. It showed a mixed economic concern. They had economic concerns and cultural concerns. That was their priority. They don't neatly fit within Joy Reid's oversimplification. These South Americans, though, these Venezuelans, 53% of them, and some of them are here illegally. But why is it that they would rather risk the chance of being deported than live in a communist or a socialist country? What happened to them in Venezuela made them want to side with Trump, right? It was because of their personal experiences with socialism and authoritarian regimes. These Venezuelans, along with the Cubans, they see the echoes of the very ideology that they fled in the Democratic Party right now. What does that tell you? That tells you we would rather risk the chance of getting deported under Donald Trump than to live in a country like the one we fled in Venezuela. Damn. You see what I'm saying? But Joy Reid, she don't get that. Her remarks demonstrate ignorance. See? And they insult the agency and autonomy of these so-called Latino voters. To suggest that Latino men own everything that happens to their mixed status families because they vote for Trump, it's not only, it's deep. I can't tell you how deeply disrespectful that is. It assumes that Latino voters don't understand their own political choices and the implications of their votes. It's patronizing and it's elitist, and the stance reeks of ignorance. They recognize the fact that if Donald Trump gets elected, there's a high likelihood that he wasn't secret about it. Him and Tom Homan said they're trying to send everybody back. But they'd rather risk that than America turn into a socialist state like Venezuela, or turn into a communist state like Cuba. That's what that tells me. That's what lets you, they've seen it before. They've lived it. They ran from that to get here. See, Joy Reid's dismissal of Cuban-Americans and these Venezuelan and South Americans who voted for Trump, it says that they're complicit in harming their families, and it ignores the very real and legitimate fears these communities have under socialism. They basically said the lesser of two evils. We rather dodge La Migra than risk the chance of this country turning into Venezuela #2. And that's what the Democratic Party was doing. And many of these voters saw in Trump a leader who recognized their experiences and rejected the policies reminiscent of the regimes they escaped. And their decision to support Trump It wasn't made out of ignorance or betrayal, as Joy Reid suggests. It was a calculated and deeply personal choice informed by their history and values. Okay? And her comments also expose the hypocrisy of these elite liberals who, while claiming to champion diversity, routinely erase the complexities within these communities. Not just Black, but also Latino and Asian. Because there's a big difference between a Japanese Asian and a Filipino Asian, or a person from Singapore and a person from mainland China. And just like Black Americans resent being treated as a monolith, so do Latinos. And to lump all of them together under the label Latino and then ignore the nuances of their identities and their cultures and their voting patterns, it's superficial, it's identity-based, it alienates many voters, and to do it as a Black woman, it brings heat on us. Now, what's the big picture? Somebody type big picture in the chat room. Y'all with me? Y'all understand what I'm saying? Did y'all follow that? Did you all follow that? Somebody type, I'm tracking, okay? So, Joy Reid's remarks are part of a broader pattern among these liberal elites, okay? They condescendingly dictate what's best for the rest of the country. That's what they're very parental. And their attitude reflects a superiority complex, and that one that dismisses the values and experiences of middle America, whether it's white, Black, Latino, Asian, or otherwise. Cuban-Americans, South Americans, for example, they voted for Trump because they saw the Democratic Party's policies as a threat to their freedoms. And instead of respecting these people's perspective, Joy Reid wants to mock and shame them and try to create division. And that reveals her own ignorance and intolerance and hate. This elitist disdain for everyday Americans, that's why many people rejected the Democratic agenda in 2024. People are tired of being lectured to by these coastal elite. We're tired of them. Whether it's Barack Obama telling us that we are sexist and stupid, Joe Biden telling us we're not Black and we don't vote for him, tired of it. Okay, and Joy Reid's comments, they weren't just an insult to Latino men, they're an insult to the intelligence and agency of all voters, people who dare to think for themselves. And it's that very mindset that that's why people voted for Donald Trump. You understand? And look, not only was Joy Reid factually wrong, but it's a blatant display for that Latino culture and their diversity. And her inability to grasp the complexities of these Latino people's identity and their voting pattern, it's emblematic of a broader problem within the liberal circles, a tendency to reduce people to simplistic categories and then shame them, right, for not conforming to this prescribed narrative. You don't tell us what to do. You're not the boss of us. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, to really understand, but think about it, I want you to understand, let's break this down. All right. These Cubans and these Central Americans and these South Americans, they voted for Trump because they rejected communism and they rejected that liberal arrogance. That's what they did. And to understand what these people did, first you got to understand the brutal realities of communism and socialism in their home countries. Okay? This is something that Joy Reid doesn't grasp. See, these people, they weren't swayed by this rhetoric of Kamala Harris. See, they were shaped by history and their personal experience. And they have a deep understanding of the devastation and consequences that oppressive political systems have. And for this lady, Joy Reid, they got food and bread lines down in Venezuela. They got inflation out the wazoo. The people in Cuba are still riding around in 1950 era's car. It's poverty out there. For all my passport bros, you've been to some of those places. You know what I'm talking about. So Joy Reid's remark was just ignorant. It's willful ignorance. She should know better. These people had to endure horrors under these regimes. I mean, for decades, Cubans lived under Fidel Castro, dictator. It was marked with political repression, poverty, and fear. And even that basic freedom, like freedom to speech, freedom of religion. Shout out to my man, Willis Addison. Thank you so much. We got 10, I need 20. That'll be plenty. Y'all make sure y'all contribute to the super chat. But in those places, state controlled the economy. It left citizens in perpetual poverty. They took your money. In other words, imagine high taxes. That's what the Democrats do. Food shortages, lack of medical supplies, crumbling infrastructure. That was the norm. And so the Cubans fled that en masse. They risked their life to take rafts and shark-infested waters just to try to get to the United States. And so to Cubans, when they look at the current Democratic Party and its embrace of policies like wealth distribution, increased government control, you can't say what you want to say on social media. That's ideological policing of speech. That's uncomfortable. It's very similar to the propaganda and the promises of Fidel Castro. And they see leaders like Kamala Harris and Bernie Sanders championing these socialist ideals. They can't ignore the parallels. You want to know why these Cubans voted against the Democrats? That's why. They saw voting for Trump as a matter of survival, a rejection of these policies that led to ruin. Now let's look at these Salvadorians. How many of y'all seen some of these movies and documentaries about El Salvador? Shout out to my man Lance Jackson. El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala. They've been ravaged by the effects of these socialist and communist insurgencies. Hell, look at El Salvador alone. Look at all the criminal activity. The gangs run wild. Y'all talking about defund the police. The only thing that saved El Salvador in recent years was giving more money to the police. They locked all those criminals up. And so you got somebody who, you got somebody who fled El Salvador because of the crime and all the socialist and communist edicts and rulings, and you want them to vote for somebody who's spitting that same rhetoric? And let's talk about Nicaragua. Daniel Ortega's Sandinista government. You guys should know about the Sandinistas. The Iran-Contra affair, all that dope got shipped to the hood back in the 1970s and 80s. That government imposed brutal authoritarian rule. They suppressed opposition, and they turned a beautiful, promising country into an economic and political crap hole. That's what they did. And the people of Central America have experienced firsthand how promises of so-called equality and reform, they just mask corruption and power grabs and exploitation. Shout out to my man Del Monte Green Beans. And shout out to the African Dyadic. Thank you so much for that. Okay, and shout out to my man Killer the Gang. Now, Central Americans who immigrated to the United States, and I grew up with some of them in the 1980s. I remember when they showed up, and some of those kids traumatized. You understand? Impoverished. I went to school with a lot of them. They came to the U.S. to escape those regimes, and just to see the Democrat Party and the progressive agenda look so dangerously familiar to what they ran from. That heavy-handedness of this government control. Look at what they did to Donald Trump under these Democratic. But that's reminiscent of some of these banana republics down in Central America. The erosion of personal freedoms. You can't say what you want to say on Facebook. They block you. And come to find out that was a conspiracy. Barack Obama sending a doggone IRS to audit people who had who dissented from what he said. And how they vilify people who speak against that's a hallmark of the same system that these folks fled. And so for them, Trump represented freedom. He represented capitalism, really, which is get it how you live. That's all capitalism is. You get what you keep what you make. And overall, it's a rejection of this creeping authoritarianism that they associate with the Democratic Party. I mean, hell, do we need to talk about Venezuela? All the passport bros, none of them go to Venezuela. You notice that? Venezuela under Nicolas Maduro and his socialist regime, that plunged the nation into chaos. And this was one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. Venezuela now faces, widespread poverty. Not just inflation, but hyperinflation. You got people starving down there. You got people, they have to wait in line for hours just to get some bread. You got a headache, you got to wait in line 5 or 6 hours. You want to make a sandwich, you're going to wait in line for a few hours. And the government, if you have something bad to say, you just disappear. They silence you. And so you got millions of people fleeing the country. They're going to Brazil, they're going to Trinidad, they're going to Colombia, seeking refuge. Not just the US, they're everywhere. And so for Venezuelan-Americans, when they hear this democratic rhetoric, this is how dangerous the Democrats have become. They promise to expand these so-called government programs, right? That's what they were saying in Venezuela. They promised to give free health care. That's what they were saying in Venezuela. They promised to redistribute wealth. What do you think that sounds like? It sounds like an alarm to these people from Venezuela because they remember the false promises made by the socialist government. That's what destroyed Venezuela. And when they see Kamala Harris and all these other Democratic leaders talking about these policies, they already know the outcome. That's what they escaped. And so their decision to vote for Donald Trump, it wasn't driven by ignorance, it was driven by the clarity of their experience. Look, these people cast their ballots for Trump because he represented a rejection of socialism, communism, and authoritarianism. And they valued his pro-capitalist policies and his stance on individual freedoms and his refusal to bow down to this lawfare and this progressive agenda and all these media types that was coming at him. Trump is talking about economic freedom. He was talking about limited government and strong borders. And that resonated with them. And that's the antithesis of what the system they fled. Again, these people said, we rather risk the chance of getting deported and having our families broke up than have America turn into one of these socialist countries. That's what they said. They knew what they were doing. It's the lesser of two evils. At least in America, you got a progress you can fight in court. They voted their best interests. They wanted to protect their families in the long run and the futures. And that's what they did. Because they know that those ideologies have been tried and tested and they lead to ruin. So Joy Reid's assertion that these voters are somehow stupid or now they're responsible for harming their family, that's not only wrong, it's vile, man, it's foul. You're going to demonize people who suffered under these regimes for voting to prevent the same doggone thing from happening to the United States. It shows your level of ignorance and arrogance, and that's breathtaking. For a woman who they give a microphone and a camera to be on national, international TV every night. I mean, her comments were so disrespectful. They were racist, they were xenophobic, and they were horrible. You trying to shame these communities for their choices. And she revealed herself to be precisely what she claims to oppose, a condescending elitist who dismisses the lived experiences of people who don't align with her. Now, look, one of the defining flaws, and I need 6 more super chats. One of the defining flaws of these liberal elites, like Joy Reid, is their refusal to recognize what they don't know. They preach about diversity, but they fail to understand it. They champion inclusivity while erasing the nuances of culture and political diversity within the communities. And their arrogance, they assume that they know what's best for everybody. Not just the Muslims, not just the blacks, not just the whites, also the Latinos. They mad at white women for voting for white men, with white men. They don't listen. They're hard-headed. And their hard-headedness alienates voters and creates the very divisions they claim to not like. These folk, the Mexicans, the Puerto Ricans, the Cubans, the Central Americans, the South Americans, they voted differently. The Mexicans and the Puerto Ricans, they voted for Kamala for the most part. The Cubans and the Central Americans and the South Americans, they voted for Trump. They voted their interests. They did what they were supposed to do. They did so to protect their families, their freedoms, and their values. And that's something that these folk don't understand. Shout out to my man, African Diastatic. Thank you so much. Now, to my fellow foundational Black Americans, it's time we address an issue that's been quietly bubbling under the surface. But see, now it's threatening to bring significant blowback upon our community. You got these loud, uninformed, arrogant people like Joy Reid overstepping racial and cultural boundaries in ways we can't afford to ignore anymore. See, her recent comments about Latino men, hoping that let me let y'all look at this again. This is what this clown said.
Promised to deport some of your mixed status families. Most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So
she just lunched there, bunched all the Latinos together, didn't even break it up. Let's look at this. Look at this clown again. Let's look at her again.
Latinos.
Also Latino men who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen.
Now, this is the most insidious part. Look how she wishes and hopes that these Latino men, wives, and who would wish that on anybody? Listen.
So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
Notice he didn't say sons, husbands, sons, uncles, and grandfathers and fathers. No, she picked on the women so that the women would then become fearful and then start screaming and hollering at the men. That's division right there. That was real slick. That's what they do, man. That's what the media do. You understand me? That was dirty. That was real dirty. But again, this woman's comments about Latino men for voting for Donald Trump, that's not just reckless, it's harmful and it's dangerous. And unfortunately, because she's seen as a representative of Black America, we are going to bear the brunt of the fallout. Latino leaders and spokespersons and communities, they're going to naturally respond to Joy Reid. You see what I put up here? You see what I put up here? This is from one of their websites. She said, just to remind the media, who do you think they're talking about? She part of the media. When you chastise Latino men for their political decisions, she disrespected a whole group of people with their own unique cultures and histories and struggles. And by making this sweeping and condescending statement, she's opened the door for reciprocal criticism about Black folks. And we can't ignore this reality. When one group publicly chastises another for perceived shortcomings, there's always going to be blowback. If Joy Reid feels comfortable lecturing the Latino community about their voting habits, it's only a matter of time before Latino leaders feel emboldened to call out our internal issues within the Black community. And that's going to make us mad. Now, see, we can handle internal conversations about our own challenges, but we don't want other people talking bad about us. That creates tension, division, and it's brought on by reckless people like Joy Reid. She needs to mind her business. Look, Latino men voting for Trump, really, it's the Central Americans, the Cubans, and the South American Latino men. Not all Latinos. Wasn't the Puerto Ricans and the Chicanos. They voted their lived experiences. As I said, many of them fled communist regimes. They fled Venezuela and other parts of Latin America. And they saw the echoes of those oppressive systems in the Democratic Party. And they chose to vote in their best interest. That's what I tell y'all all the time, vote your interest. And so when you got Joy Reid's remarks, she ignored that reality. But she also disrespected their right to self-determination. And this kind of overstepping, that's going to foster animosity and tension and a backlash. See, again, one of the reasons we face this issue is because Joy Reid, despite not being foundational Black American, not having ancestry that goes back to the cotton fields and the tobacco fields and the plantations here in the United States. She doesn't have our history, but she is perceived by outsiders as speaking for us. She is tethered to the foundational Black American flagship, and her words and actions and mistakes are absorbed into the larger body of Black America. She has not lived our culture. She does not understand our unique experiences, and yet her immigrant background is often overlooked. And as a result, we are held accountable for her ignorance. And it's not just unique to Joy Reid. Roland Martin and him and his Haitian roots, hell, he acts like he's a spokesperson for Black America. Then you got Kamala Harris, whose lineage we still don't know what she is, Indian, Jamaican, Irish. She's frequently, they tether themselves to foundational. Joy Hostin, that's another one. Sonny Hostin, I mean. She Puerto Rican from the Bronx. Black daddy, Puerto Rican mama. Posing as a Black person. Foundational Black America. You see? They tether themselves to the FBA narrative when it benefits them politically or socially, and then they separate themselves when it's convenient. These folks have not experienced generational struggles under slavery, Jim Crow, and systematic racism that foundational Black Americans have endured. They're the product of, they're not the product of our culture, okay? And yet their actions and their words continue to define us in the public eye. It's not cool. It's not cool. And see, the biggest issue with these folks is that they reap the benefits meant for FBAs while failing to represent us authentically. They take scholarships and set-asides created for the descendants of slaves here in America. They occupy jobs and opportunities designed to uplift FBA. And worse, they often adopt these elitist attitudes, speaking down to foundational Black Americans and other ethnic groups. Just like Joy Reid was speaking down to the Latino community. And that doesn't just harm us and our community, they create unnecessary drama and conflict with other racial groups and ethnic groups. And see, this is not to say that all immigrants are harmful. Look, we're not saying that we don't love our Black brothers and sisters. That's not what we're saying. Many from the African diaspora, you come to the United States with the spirit of cooperation and humility and understanding, you good. You contribute to the community, you support the causes, you respect our history, we good. We appreciate the love that you have. But see, what we can't tolerate are those who come over here with this attitude of superiority, attempting to dictate how foundational Black Americans should operate politically, socially, and culturally, and then turn around and cause division with other ethnic groups. That's not cool. I need 5 more super chats. We got 15. Give me 20. That'll be plenty. Now, we need to distinguish ourselves. In order to avoid these future situations like this, we need to double down on our efforts to politically and socially distinguish foundational Black Americans from these other immigrant groups. We need to clearly delineate who is FBA and who is not. And this is not about division. It's about us protecting our identity and ensuring that the actions of these folks like Joy Reid and Sonny Hostin and Roland Martin are not unfairly attributed to our community. Same thing with Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. All that hell and stuff she's keeping up there. To the rest of the world, to the rest of America, she just looks like a Black woman. See, we need a litmus test. We need a set of standards to clarify who speaks for FBA and who benefits from the systems created to address our specific history of oppression. When people like Joy Reid and Kamala Harris and Sonny Hostin and Roland Martin, and when they overstep their bounds, it must be clear that they do not represent us. Okay, we need to make that clear. They don't represent our views, our values, not a foundation of Black America. Shout out to my man, Killer the Game. This distinction is essential, not only for maintaining our integrity, but also for preserving the delicate racial dynamics in this country. We sitting on a powder keg. Are y'all listening to me? You can't go around disrespecting people and think they're not going to disrespect you back. A lot of people in Southern California know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of racial animosity going on in Southern California right now between Mexicans and Latinos and Blacks. I'm just saying, people are going to defend themselves when you get to talking reckless about them. Hell, they'll defend themselves with less. Shout out to my man, Del Monte Green. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And you got people like Joy Reid, her arrogance and her ignorance and chastising Latino immigrants. It reflects the very attitude that she has towards Middle America and the rest of those elites. She's displayed the same elitism and racism and xenophobia she claims to oppose. You speaking down to Latino men. You're dismissing their voting decisions. And she just revealed a fundamental lack of understanding of these people's history and their struggles. It's the same thing she does to Black men and Black women, foundational Black American men and women. And see, it's not that her actions are not just embarrassing, they're harmful to the racial dynamic that has allowed foundational Black Americans, white Americans, Latino Americans to coexist and work together despite our differences. That's not cool. We know that we have issues. We don't shy away from that. Latinos know they have issues. White folks know they have issues. But when you got somebody like Joy Reid posing as a Black woman, chastising other racial groups, specifically that men creating division, it invites criticism to our community. Criticism that often overlooks the unique challenges and triumphs of foundational Black Americans. Her behavior highlights the urgency of political and socially separating ourselves from these Black immigrant voices, especially these ones who are extreme. We're not talking about a Marcus Garvey, okay? We're not talking about a Minister Louis Farrakhan or Malcolm X, okay? All of which who were motivated by foundational Black Americans. They came here and got on our program. We talking about people who are intentionally misrepresenting us. So what's the path forward, fam? What's the path forward? Somebody type path forward in the chat. I need 3 more super chats. We need to draw some firm boundaries. We need to establish that Joy Reid is not foundational Black American. It needs to be said loudly and often. She is not FBA. Okay? And we need to make explicitly clear that her views are her own and rooted in her own immigrant background and not reflective of our community. And we also need to go double down and advocate for policies and opportunities that specifically benefit foundational Black Americans. If you're going to speak on behalf of foundational Black Americans, you need to be a foundational Black American. And when you got immigrants telling themselves our struggle and then enjoying the benefits, that also weakens our position. Shout out to Cologne, Jakala. I would not take my butt to Nigeria and get on Nigerian national TV and start speaking on behalf of Nigerians or talking reckless about Ghanaians while I'm in Nigeria faking like I'm Nigerian. I wouldn't do that. That's a mess. That's out of pocket. And what we also need to do is we need to foster understanding and collaboration with these other ethnic groups. See, these unspoken boundaries that we know about between racial groups here in America exist for a reason. It's there to keep the peace. It's there to preserve respect and prevent unnecessary drama and conflict. We don't want a race riot. We don't want this animosity. JT513, a good Mac, knows himself. And we need to make sure these folk understand these racial boundaries. Stop, cut it out. Joy Reid. Now I'm gonna take the opportunity to I have somebody who's gonna call in. Okay. Let me go ahead and see if I get this is one of these political operatives. Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can get this person. I had a conversation earlier. Let me see if I can get him on the phone here. Y'all hit the #1 button. Hold on a minute. Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me? Okay, hold on a minute. Let me see if I can bring you in. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the broadcast. Would you mind introducing yourself? First name is sufficient.
Hi, yes, I'm Elena.
Okay. Now, I asked you, thank you so much. I asked you to listen to my broadcast. As you know, I'm not Latino. Okay. I am African American at best. Now, ironically, my biological father, who I met 10 years ago, is a person who I didn't know, but he actually is a Black person from another country. And I'm not familiar with those cultures, but I was raised by a Black man from North Carolina who I'm named after, who's been my daddy since I was born. He was there to catch me when I came out of my mama, and my mama's from Mississippi. So as far as I'm concerned, culturally speaking, I'm descended from people from North Carolina and Mississippi. That's all I know. You understand me?
Yeah.
So I don't come to speak on behalf of immigrants, nor do I want to speak on behalf of Latinos. Now, I said a lot today, and specifically I spoke about, I spoke about Latinos, and I kind of try to explain to my audience the difference between a Chicano, a Puerto Rican, a Cuban, a Central American, Venezuelan. Can you please, first of all, could you please elaborate, if you will, what your thoughts are on some of these things that this Joy Reid lady say? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I was listening since you started, and I have a really big interest as someone who comes from a Latino background, and I focus a lot on covering immigration issues and just like cultural issues within the Latino community. And I find Joy Reid's statement about Latino men who voted for Trump and her suggestion that their family members should be deported is deeply troubling. And it also shows that Democrats, they want people to be penalized and punished based on their political ideologies and their political identity. So they want to weaponize, whether it's the legal system, the justice system, against people who they disagree with. And it's just un-American at its core. And it's a real threat to our democracy. They always say that Trump is a threat to the democracy, but they are the true threat to the democracy because they want people to experience negative outcomes just because of the way they vote.
Mm-hmm. Now, I found a part of Joy Reid's statement quite insidious when she basically said you own, let me get the exact words here. I want to make sure I don't misquote this. She says Latino men who, despite their utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed class and mixed status families. I don't like the way, I guess she's entitled to say it the way she wants to, but as far as the substance, most of them, I guess that's othering Latino men. Who is them, right? And she might as well say they voted in a 55% majority, making deportations happen. She didn't even distinguish between Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Central Americans, and South Americans. She didn't do that at all. That's the first issue I'd like you to address, her ignorance and not understanding that Chicanos voted differently than Cubans and Puerto Ricans voted differently than Venezuelans. And the other thing, and this is what I found quite insidious. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas. How do you feel about her insenses? Like she could have said grandmothers, right? Why did she say abuelas? Tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, she wants it to have she's looking for it to really come off as a sting and to really humiliate and shame Latino men. Everyone knows that in Latino culture, a Latina grandmother and abuela is like the Virgin Mary. She's someone that can do no wrong, and she's highly praised by the entire family and the community. Whether it's your actual biological grandmother or somebody else's grandmother, abuela cannot be touched. And so, but back to the distinctions, I think that's a really important thing to bring up because there's a big difference just between Cuban-Americans and Mexican-Americans, as you pointed out. So Cuban-Americans, they tend to have higher levels of education in terms of higher education and higher incomes, higher wealth. And some of that is due to racial factors because, as you know, when a lot of the Cuban-Americans came after fleeing from communism in Cuba, mainly the white Cubans were able to flee first and go to Florida and start building up their community there. And Black Cubans, they experienced the same segregation and discrimination that Black Americans faced when they came to the United States as well. You can there's statistics and you can look up just how Cuban Americans, they have a higher education percentages in their communities versus Mexican Americans or Puerto Ricans. And then Puerto Ricans are a distinct group within the Latino community because they're already U.S. citizens. And so you can't scare them with threats of deportation. There's nowhere to deport a Puerto Rican because they're already a U.S. citizen. And so if they want to leave Puerto Rico, they can easily do that. All they have to do is book a flight and go to anywhere they want to go in the world, including the United States. They can go to New York, they can go to Florida, anywhere they want to go. And that's something that Joy Reid's statement doesn't take into consideration at all. Not all Latinos have mixed status families. There are a lot of Latinos who have long-standing roots in the United States of America. Their family has been there for several generations. And so they don't have any worries about anybody in their immediate or extended family being deported.
Okay. So that's very interesting. It had not occurred to me that Cuban-Americans, so Castro kicked out basically the rich white Cubans. That's who he kicked out. And so they already had money. They already had a propensity for education and wealth. And so they basically just ended up in South Florida and they continued what they were doing. So they basically voted like a lot of other people voted, rich or successful whites. They voted for Trump. They voted for communism. I mean, they voted against communism. They voted pro-business. That's a very keen observation. Thank you for that. The other thing that I thought was insidious, the fact that Joy Reid attacked the women. Okay. In other words, it seemed to me Donald Trump's going to deport your wives, your mothers, and your grandmothers is something that would make a woman afraid. If I were a Latino woman, I could see myself being afraid to hear that. And then I would then go and speak to the man of the house and chastise him or second guess him for what he did. As a woman, can you, in the Latino community, I do know that it's very patriarchal and typically the men make the decisions, but they also have to hear, all crap rolls uphill. And so they would have to hear those women's voices. Please, if there's something there, maybe you can explain that to me and give it a little bit more context. Shout out to Hannibal. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Latino families do abide by patriarchal family structure where the man is the head of the house. But Latino women still have a lot of input in their houses and within their family dynamics. They're often like the heart of the house, the heartbeat of the house. They play a lot of they play a huge role in impacting and influencing their husband and the men in their community as well. And so I don't think, if you look at the statistics, it's not like Kamala Harris got 90% of the Latino vote. She only got about, 60-ish% of the Latino female vote. So I don't think Latinos are buying it either. If they weren't swayed by what the Democratic Party, what the Democrats were trying to offer them, it's because they truly weren't interested.
Okay. Now, I'm not going to hold you up too long. I know it's late where you are. But the other thing, Joy Reid, I don't know if you know a lot about Joy Reid, but if I were an outsider looking at her, now I can look at people, I can look at other Black people, people of Africa, and I can tell you whether or not they're foundational Black American. I can tell you, I can look at them and tell. You may not be able to do that. When you see Joy Reid, what do you see as far as her ethnicity?
When I look at Joy Reid, she's clearly a Black woman. She doesn't look like she's ambiguous or mixed with anything, but you can definitely see that I don't think she's Black American, even though she has an American sounding name. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes a lot of foreign people, like whether they're from West Africa, like Nigeria or some other area of the world, they might come and take on a different name or get married to somebody who is American and then take their last name. So I think that might be what happened with Joy Reid.
Okay. Now, the thing is, though, because she is Black, a lot of Latinos will say that, this is what Black people are saying about us. This is what their political pundits, a person they put up to represent them, is saying about us. Do you think that statement, it sounds accurate to me. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you think the blowback will be, if any?
I don't think that Joy Reid should be treated as a representative of the Black community because she's really just a pundit paid for and bought by MSNBC. So I think everybody should take what she says with a grain of salt, because her thoughts are not truly hers. They're truly what the network wants her to say and what kind of message they want her to put out there. So I think it's different from someone like Al Sharpton, or, you know, someone who's actually known in the Black American community and who is brought on to speak. That's different. But someone who works for the mass media, they should not be treated as a representative of one racial group.
And I appreciate that your thoughtfulness in that. Now, I want you to imagine that the following is being said not by a Black woman, Joy Reid, but being said by a white man. Let's listen to what's being said, and then I want you to tell me your immediate impression of what you think about if this was a white man saying the following.
Also Latino men who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
If a white man had said that to the Latino community, would it be considered racist?
Yeah, I'd say it would be. Even just the disdain in her voice when she said mixed status, mixed class. Like, it sounds like she's made it into like a racial slur. I didn't even know that was a slur that you could use against Latinos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it sound like something you don't want to be a part of, like you're dirty because you have immigrants in your family.
Yeah, and I know you're being open-minded and you're trying to, but I can't see this not having some blowback, because to me, she looks like a Black woman, and I know you know things and you follow the political landscape as part of your job, but and I'm going to assume most Latinos, most guys that I know, hardworking, they don't follow this stuff like this. All they see is sound bites of a Black woman disrespecting their people, trying to shame them for their vote, and hoping and praying that their wives and the women folk and their abuelas get deported. That's what I see. And I think that's dangerous. But Ms. Elena, I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate you. Is there anything else you want to add to my audience, which is predominantly foundational Black American, mostly Black? We got all kind of people here. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation, maybe that I missed? Any other thoughts that you have?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I just want to also wrap up by saying that I appreciate you going into the different backgrounds within the Latino community, because that's one thing that the media and people who are supposed to be delivering the news and actually informing people, they oversimplify the diversity within the Latino community and the diverse experiences and priorities of different Latino voters. And so that's something that shouldn't be ignored. And it's just really shameful that she would take this as an opportunity to attack the voters, the Latino male voters, instead of actually reflecting on why her candidate lost.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I do my best over here. I appreciate you. Thank you, Miss Elena. You're welcome back anytime. You have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you, man.
Thank you, you too.
All right. Welcome back. So look, you guys see, look, man, I don't overstep my bounds, man. I don't overstep my bounds. I want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who contributed to the super chat. My man Lavelle, if you don't subscribe and you ain't Black, Joe Biden, boy, it's good looking out. You ain't lying, man. Democrats preach acceptance, love, equality, blah, blah, blah. Then turn around and show us their true colors when we refuse to bend the knee. Isn't that the truth? Shout out to D-Med. Keep illuminating the path to truth and empowerment. I shall, my brother, I shall. African dyadic stoic. Read out on the deck of the slave boat named Jesus. Boy, ain't you something? Yeah, good looking out. Canada. Good evening, Uncle D from Louisiana. So the super chat is for the cat food. Shout out to Buddy. Where's Buddy? I ain't seen Buddy in a minute. Buddy don't come up here no more. He's got sophisticated. But thank you so much. David Dickey, Uncle D. So now, not only did Black women show distasteful favor in the Black community, now they want to destroy another community. Look, that ain't on our Black women. That's on Joy Reid, okay? Our Black women got enough issues, but this is not them. We can't blame foundational Black American women for Joy Reid's loud mouth. You understand? What's her name? Lomina? That's not on them. You understand? Now, you know, we have our own issues in the Black community, but this is not our foundational Black American women. But see, the problem is it could blow back on them. You see what I mean? Now they're going to start saying, well, Black women are xenophobic, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. Right? Because that's what Joy Reid is coming off as. And so, you know, if for nothing else, man, we need to distinguish that because you have daughters, you have mothers, and we know not to get off into other people's business like that. We don't do that. That's what foundational Black, we don't get off into other people's business like that. That's on them. But thank you so much, David. I appreciate you. Who else we got? Depressed 1170. Thank you for the $5 super chat, super sticker. Vito, the Godfather, warned us about women like Joy Reid. Rip Kevin, shout out, rest in peace, late great Kevin Samuels. We got my man Willis Addison, spot on psychoanalysis of the Lane Street media. Good looking out, fam. Lance Jackson, Del Monte Green Beans. Good looking out, fam. Also, the African diastatic. You and the Crimson Cure need to be elected to reimagine Department of Education. And that boy, y'all can't pay me enough to work for the government. I'm cool. I like doing what I'm doing. Shout out to everybody, man. Appreciate you guys who contribute to the super chat. Big shout out to the Crimson Cure. Y'all type Crimson Cure in the chat room. Also, Killer the Game. You know, she was the only one that, when my channel got demonetized, you know, she was the only one that did a weekly play-by-play of my co-parenting with the Spurling show. So big shout out to the Crimson Cure. Y'all type at Crimson Cure in the chat room. Appreciate you, sisters. Good looking out. Also, the African diastatic in DC back in the 80s and 90s, growing up was the same. El Salvadorians and Nicaraguans are conservative. Dios orden justicia, God, order, and justice. Shout out to you, man. Appreciate you. Killer the Game. Thank you so much for the super sticker. And Del Monte Green Beans, they need to be aware they are being used, certain agenda. It won't end well either for them. Thank you so much. Also, Kalanji Kala, thank you for the great analysis daily. Good looking out, fam. I appreciate you, Kalanji. Also, JT513, a good Mac knows himself. Hannibal, good looking out, Hannibal. It's a minute since I've seen you. Thank you so much for the $20 super sticker. Urban Eagle, thank you so much for the super sticker. And also Kay Woolard, good looking out. He says, Joy Reid is speaking for FBA. Well, nah, man, we can't let her speak for foundational Black American women. That's not cool. Our sisters get enough problems. That ain't on them. And so we need to call that out. You understand? That ain't on them. You know, they got enough with them, but this ain't theirs, and we can't put it on. A big shout out to Aramis Thornton. Thank you so much for the Cash App. Also, Mr. Ashton and AB and Demetrius Colbert. But anyway, look, shout out to everybody who contributed to the Super Chat, Cash App, and the PayPal. I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all are the real MVP. Shout out to all the Ice Lords. Make sure you become a member. That's the only way you can see all of the videos from back in the day. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the Blizzard King channel, it's popping over there. I need y'all to go to the Blizzard King channel, okay, and get your subscribe on over at the Blizzard King channel. You need to make sure you hightail it over there, okay? Ease on over there. As I used to say, okay, when my bucket was almost out of gas. You understand me? When my bucket was almost out of gas, I said, we need to ease on to the house. I need you to ease on over to the Blizzard King Reviews. That's the name of the channel. Go to the Blizzard King Reviews. Okay. And make sure you check it out. I got a lot of good stuff going on over there. If you haven't eased on over to the Blizzard King Reviews channel, you're missing out, baby. You are missing out. Okay, I want y'all to go do it now. I almost have 4,000 subscribers, and I need y'all to give me that. I think I need about 150 more subscribers, and I'll be all in. Okay, this is what you got to do. Let me show you what it looks like, so you guys won't mistake it. Share the screen here. Blizzard King reviews. We lit up over there. It says right there, the Blizzard King reviews, man. And we over there talking about. Let's see what we got today. Today we discussed slaying the dragon, understanding communication styles between men and women. Winter is here. There's no retirement for old 304s. They can bring you peace or leave you in pieces. These are all some really good stuff. All this stuff, man. Look at these views. Stop blaming all men for your bad decisions. 50 Cent talks about modern women want Sally for that. This was doing well. I got like 1,000 views a day. Look, over here I talk about, you guys like the academic approach that I take. I do the same thing with these. I'm very professional, very both-sided, very, I guess prophetic in the way I'm talking about things, good advice. And this is why I talk about the soft stuff, not the political stuff that we do here. So y'all make sure y'all go over there and subscribe. Just type in the Blizzard King and go ahead and subscribe to the channel, man. Go ahead and check that out. I will put the link in the chat room here so you guys can get over there. Make sure you become a member of the Dennis Spurling Podcast channel. Also, get this membership up. And let me know so I can give you a shout out. Anytime you're a member and you say something, I'm going to get you a shout out. But now, let's get back to the matter at hand. Okay? Back to the matter at hand. Joy Reid hopes. Let me let y'all hear what this woman said one more time. I want y'all to hear it. Okay? I want you guys to hear this foolishness, this troublemaker.
Who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
Somebody type blonde wig in the chat room. Blonde wig. What happened? She had that Donald Trump haircut going on. Anyway, family, we need to take back the voice of foundational Black Americans. Because, see, for far too long, FBAs have allowed unqualified, ill-informed, and downright embarrassing folk posing as Black Americans speak on our behalf. And whether it's the latest rapper or actor or singer or entertainer, our goals, ambitions, and culture have been misrepresented for decades. And see, now the world now associates us with twerking, rapping, popping pills, drinking alcohol, smoking weed, because we got these subpar folks that have become the loudest voices claiming to represent our people. And enough is enough. Now, at least most of those people were Black, foundational Black American. But now we're dealing with another wave of misrepresentation. This is immigrants, Black immigrants, with these half-baked liberal educations and warped ideals passed down from their ivory towers of their liberal elites. And people who don't share our history, who haven't walked in our shoes, who fundamentally misunderstand the unique struggles and triumphs of foundational Black America. They decided to speak on our behalf now. People like Joy Reid, Martin Lawrence, Angela Rye, folks like Sonny Hostin and all the rest of them. They use their platforms not to elevate our community, but to alienate us from others and diminish our legacy and embarrass us on the world stage. Let's be clear. They do not speak for us. They never did. We never asked them to, and we don't want them to. They took the liberty upon themselves. And it's time foundational Black Americans make it abundantly clear to them and to the world that they are not the voice of our people. Our history predates this country. We were here before the United States was even a nation, and we fought in every war. We built the foundation of this country with our blood, sweat, and tears, from Crispus Attucks to Frederick Douglass to Harriet Tubman to Martin Luther King Jr. We had towering leaders speak on our behalf and articulate our struggles and demand our justice with dignity and power. And now, family, we're forced to watch as the likes of Joy Reid and Sonny Hostin and Roland Martin climb onto the shoulders of our ancestors, pretending to be their extensions while delivering hollow, divisive rhetoric that disrespects everything we fought for. We are FBA, and we must shut this down. It's our obligation to distinguish ourselves when these people speak out of turn and misrepresent us. Every single time someone like Joy Reid condescends or speaks down to other groups, speaking without understanding and offending entire communities, the public needs to know she don't speak for us. Every time Roland Martin goes on a self-righteous rant, every time Sonny Hostin talks down to our people, every time Angela Rye weaponizes her platform to belittle others, it's our duty to say it loud and clear. You do not represent the voices of foundational Black Americans. We demand leaders who are thoughtful, who are learned, who are fair-minded, and who are just. We want representatives who uplift our people and respect others, not opportunists who take every chance to belittle and condescend. We want those who can articulate the best about our culture, our history, our place in America, not those who seek to divide us. We don't want Sonny Hostin, Joy Reid, and Roland Martin and Angela Rye claiming to speak for us. Heck no. And if they're the only voices offered to us, we'd rather speak for ourselves or remain silent than allow folks like that to stand up for us. That's how serious this is. See, this is a call for every Black person to listen. It's time to take responsibility for our public image. It's time to be proactive in calling out these individuals and making it clear to the world that they're not representative of us, not foundational Black Americans. It's time to elevate voices that honor our history, fight for our future, and respect the legacy of the giants on whose shoulders we stand. We didn't ask for Joy Reid. We don't need Joy Reid. We don't need anyone speaking for us who doesn't understand or respect who we are. Foundational Black Americans can speak for ourselves. And when we do, the world will listen. Let's ensure that the next time someone claims to speak for us or refuses to announce who they actually speak for, they are worthy of the honor. This is Dennis Spurling. I love you guys. Shout out to Logic Hits. Shout out to Mile High Gamer. And as I always say at this time,
Dennis Spurling Podcast. Hit the like button, subscribe.